And now it is my pleasure to introduce our next conversation, exploring LGBTQ plus allyship, affiliations, and donor motivations. Peter has been an agent of change on behalf of Fresno's disenfranchised and marginalized communities for 35 years. He is passionate about serving others and strives to lead by example. His doctoral dissertation, Higher Education, Philanthropy, Exploring LGBTQ plus Allyship, Affiliations, and Donor Motivations in 2022 is an emerging topic within academic research and higher education philanthropy. He also posits a new theoretical framework, Allyship-based Motivation, ABM, whereby one's allyship toward causes oriented around diversity, equity, and inclusion is an integral component of their being and self-identity. Welcome, Peter. Thank you so much for being here. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Mariella, and thanks to everyone that's tuning in. It's an honor to be here, and I'm going to share my screen. I've got a PowerPoint ready, so make sure I do it correctly. Mariella, am I doing this correctly? You can see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, great. Well, it's 10:30. I live in Fresno, California. So thank you again for joining me. I'm Peter Robertson, and my pronouns are he, him, his. And thank you to Power to Fly for giving me this space to share my dissertation. I wanted to offer a land acknowledgement to Fresno State. The campus sits in the midst of the San Joaquin Valley, a valley rich in the traditions and representation of Native American peoples and cultures, and we are grateful to be in the traditional homelands of the Yucats and Mono peoples, whose diverse tribal communities share stewardship over this land. My goals for today is I want to discuss my dissertation research, contribute to academia and higher education, as well as share some new insights and paradigms within philanthropy. And then before I get started, I want to give sincere shout outs of appreciation to my dissertation committee. From left to right is Dr. Pryor, Dr. Hernandez, and Dr. Garvey. So I wanted to start with sharing some of my lived experiences. I was born in Bogota, Colombia. I came here as a child. My name was changed to Peter Robertson, and I grew up in the Mount Vernon, Washington area. And some of my lived experiences include being in Head Start, English language learner, naturalized U.S. citizen, and my identities and intersectionalities include being a gay queer male and a cisgender as well as being middle-aged. And I also want to recognize and acknowledge that I do have white privilege passing due to an English surname and light skin color. So the case context that I want to talk about is Fresno State. I started Fresno State in 1987, and it was challenging at that time. There were appearances by the Ku Klux Klan on campus that is documented here from the student newspaper. But I also want to share that we've had some recent wins, and one of them was last year, was the flying of the pride flag here on campus for the first time. So I had two inspirations for the research that I'm going to share with you today. The first is Rainbow Graduation Celebrations, which I've been involved with since 2014. And we honor graduates and allies every year. We've done that for the last 9 years, and attendees range from 12 to 84. And collectively, we've raised about $35,000 in donations. And I worked on a project a year ago in honor and memory of Zoya Zindel, who was a transgender activist here on campus who had passed away. And so we worked to establish a scholarship in his name, an endowed scholarship. And one of the caveats was that we had to raise $25,000 to endow this scholarship, and which in 3 months we had raised $37,000. And so when I looked at that data, there were 99 donors. I looked at that data and I noticed 14 organizations had given, as well as 85 households. And when I dug into those 85 households, I noticed that 35 of those households, about 40%, were actually heterosexual LGBTQ plus allies. And that was surprising to me. And that really guided the research that the research journey I've been on for the last year. So the problem and purpose, the problem is has to do with higher education, and then looking at that higher education, philanthropy, and also nationwide, and then also looking at philanthropic motivations. In the past, there's been research on LGBTQ plus alumnus research, but doing some readings from my chair, Dr. Pryor, I did look at allyship, and that kind of guided my dissertation to look at allies of the LGBTQ plus community. So I had two purposes in my research: exploring allyship affiliations and also learning about motivations for giving. I'm using this symbol. It's from Fresno State Athletics, and this is the second year they've done posts on this. So I really wanted to share that the campus has really become a more welcoming place for everyone. So I had two research questions. One, how do heterosexual allies describe their allyship affiliations? And then also, what are those motivations for giving to LGBTQ plus campus programs and student initiatives? And so these are my two research questions. I looked at three theoretical frameworks. My primary theoretical framework was from Dresner and Garvey and Osserman, called IBM, Identity-Based Motivation. And this is where alumni are motivated to act in identity-related ways when their giving is aligned to their identity. And then I had two secondary frameworks: philanthropic mirroring from Dresner, where mirroring or reflecting aspects of donor identity is important. And the second is the identity-based philanthropy from Dresner Garvey, as well as the Kellogg Foundation. And this looks at impact philanthropy as well as justice motivation. So this case study was bounded by heterosexual LGBTQ allies that were also donors, and it also involved alumnus and donors from Fresno State, which is one of 23 campuses in the California State University. My participants were purposely sampled from our database, and they were donors to either Rainbow Graduation Celebrations and or the Zoyer Zindel Scholarship Fund. And the participants in this study self-identified as heterosexual LGBTQ plus allies. So my collection analysis included 16 one-on-one interviews. They were semi-structured over Zoom. Transcribed was 256 pages, 11 and a half hours. And I did 3 rounds of coding. The first was by hand, and the second 2 were utilizing Delph software. And this uncovered inductive coding categories that I'm going to share with you. Before I continue on the findings, I did want to offer a positionality of who I am as a practitioner. I'm a graduate of Skagit Valley College and also attended Fresno City College, and I just completed my 4th degree at Fresno State. But when I was an undergrad student, the campus was at that time unfriendly and unwelcoming for LGBTQ people and those that love them. And also my journey to complete a bachelor's degree took 10 years. So that top photo is my first public LGBTQ speech in December of 1987. And the following picture underneath was me on campus building a new pink and lavender booth for the United Student Pride. And that was taken in the spring of 1988. So the demographics and the trustworthiness of this study, the 16 participants identified as 5 were friends, 11 were alumnus, 6 men and 10 women, all were cisgender, 1 API, 1 Armenian, 1 Black, 5 Hispanic, Chicano, Latino, and 8 white. And this photo was taken on June 1st, and we flew the Progress Pride flag on campus June 1st of this year. So my research findings with allyship affiliations reveal that the primary reason people are allies to the LGBT community is because they have a family member or a close friend. And I have a quote from one of the participants, Tiffany, who said, "A boy took a ball and threw it at her son's head and called him a queer fag and knocked him down in front of everyone." And she's an ally because of her son. And the second one is second affiliation finding is supporting social justice and equity for all. And here I have a quote from Isaac, who's an ally, who says, "Everybody means LGBTQ and all means all." With donor motivations, the primary reason people are donors, according to the participants in this study, is the relationship and trust with the asker or the professional fundraiser. And I have two quotes. One is from Roxy, who says it makes a difference on who asks and who we trust. And the other one is from Isaac that says a connection with the person requesting the funds is important. And the secondary motivation is interest in the cause or the giving category itself. Mary Keir shared that she wants LGBTQ students to feel loved, and Jerry reported that he is happy to help LGBTQ students achieve their goals. And some other revelations that came out of allyship affiliations that were interesting to find for me. Some allies were unaware of their allyship. Some allies felt as outsiders within the LGBTQ community. Some people felt that their allyship was challenged by others, and they collectively show that they have an affinity for social justice and equality for all. And some shared the challenges of navigating the spaces of activism versus advocacy. And then for donor motivations, the participants shared with me that the areas of support were important to them. Again, the relationship with the asker. They enjoyed looking at specific student support categories, and they also had preferences for scholarship support. So one thing that I noticed is that there's no LGBTQ allyship theoretical framework. So I paused it in my research to create one. And so with the assistance of my chair, Dr. Jonathan Pryor, I created Allyship-based Motivation. And you can read some of the tenets of that there. But the three I want to call out as an emerging field of study. It's an integral component of being and self-identity. And also, I believe it extends beyond LGBTQ issues and people to encompass other disenfranchised and marginalized students and alumni. So the study's significance, I'm just going to highlight two of them. It highlights the importance and value of LGBTQ plus allyship as an emerging demographic, and also it contributes to contributions and scholarship to academia regarding higher education philanthropy. The study does have some limitations. Half of the participants were white. Fresno State only had 2 giving categories to select from to find participants. And then also I used email, which might have excluded some people from the study that didn't have email. And finally, these findings may not be applicable to all private colleges and universities or faith-based institutions. So I had some implications for research I wanted to share. One is explore expanding giving categories and opportunities, and also engage LGBTQ plus allies in philanthropic giving. And so I wanted to also share this as some new Zoom backgrounds that Fresno State put out earlier last week that I wanted to share on you to again show you that Fresno State is really embracing LGBTQ stakeholders and their allies and friends. Implications for practice, I have a few. I think it's important to examine allyship-based motivations, affiliations, connections throughout the campus. Fresno State has 200 majors, but we also have 400 clubs and student organizations. I also think authentic and sincere messaging is important. And the example I have here is Nathan Cornejo, who's a Fresno State student that was featured by Brand Strategy Marketing. And he's a chemistry major, which is incredible, but his story connects with me. He's an immigrant from El Salvador. He recognizes him as a member of the LGBTQ community. He was from a lower socioeconomic status, and he's also a DACA recipient. And the other thing that I want to share is the offering inclusive salutations, options, and official correspondence. A lot of Fortune 500 companies are doing this, such as American Express and United Airlines, and that's offering the salutation MX. I worked with a graduate who had transitioned from female to male. And so which was wonderful. We updated his name in the database, but he was still getting mail with a female salutation. And so I talked to him on the phone and said, would you like to become a Mister? And he said, actually, that doesn't align with me. Do you have another option? And so he was the first in the database to have the MX salutation. And then I think I became the second one because I wanted to support him as a show of strength and solidarity. And then the last implication for practice is considering dedicating development directors for specific LGBTQ campus programs and initiatives, as well as academic minors and majors, endowed professorships, as well as supporting student scholarships. So these are two quick stories I wanted to share with you about how representation matters. The first is Hugo Santiago, who was a student at Skagit Valley College. He just finished a second degree at Western Washington University. But my alma mater, we both went to the same school. I get this article about Hugo, and it talks about his immigrant experience from Oaxaca, Mexico to Mount Vernon. And that really aligned with who I am as a person and my identity. And it touched me in wanting to support students like Hugo and Skagit Valley College. And then the second one is from Fresno State's flag raising is Esteban Para Guerrero, where our brand strategy marketing actually made a video a little over a minute, and they shared this with the rainbow stripe on this on social media and on the website to just show how representation matters. And I thought both of these were good examples of how representation matters and why. And then I want to talk about why allyship matters as well. This is my doctoral cohort. There was 15 of us that attended Rainbow graduation in May. And of the 15 of us, 12 actually attended the ceremony and wear the rainbow regalia. And of the 12, 9 of these individuals came as allies. And that was probably the most heartfelt experience for me of who I am as a person. So I do want to give a shout out to my colleagues. And then I wanted to finish up with about the importance of Rainbow graduation celebrations. I interviewed, this is what we give our Rainbow grads. We get sponsors to pay for this. And so no students are charged for this. But I interviewed one of our participants, Thomas, said, it's immeasurable to see the impact the Rainbow box has on LGBTQ plus students. In that Rainbow box, that's their acceptance. And best of all, somebody has gifted it to them. So thank you so much for your time. This is my contact information. My doctoral dissertation is available on ProQuest and academia.edu. And then I also found out my alumni association here at Fresno State is constructing a bobblehead that includes me, our live mascot, Victory Bulldog III, and Time Out. So I thought that would be a fun way to finish this. And thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Peter. Beautiful presentation, and it's great to see the work that you're doing. You do have more time. I know that you probably tried to go through that to not be cut off, but is there anything else you'd like to give voice to, any particular part of this journey that you want to dive in a little deeper, as we do have some moments left before we move on to our next conversation?
Happy to. Thank you, Mariella. I'm open to any questions if there are any as well. I really want to salute my chair, Jonathan Pryor. I have been in four degrees at Fresno State, and it wasn't until the last semester of my 4th degree where I actually had an openly LGBTQ plus professor in the classroom. And for me, that was a very pivotal moment where, again, I think representation matters, and our students need to see people in positions of leadership and power that look like them in different areas of their cultural intersectionalities. And for me, that made the program extremely beneficial for me. And I do want to give him a shout out.
Awesome. Thank you. And for anyone who's, maybe curious or interested in getting into this line of work and research, I would just love to pose a question to you. If you could go back in time, as you were, beginning to start off on this path, accumulating so much information and encouragement. Is there one piece of advice you would give to yourself, right before starting this journey that, maybe some folks might be starting it now that they could use this advice?
Yes, I think I've got a couple. One is research something you're passionate about because you're going to be married to it for a year. And the second thing is open to changing what your focus could be and evolving. For me, my research was going to explore LGBTQ alumnus, but after working on those two projects, I switched to allies of the community, and that became emerging and new. So for me, that became that my passion evolved and became greater. So I think be open to new things, but follow your heart and make sure it's something that you love, because you're going to be with it for at least a year.
I love that. Great advice. And so we went back in time a little bit for that advice. Let's jump into the future. What are your hopes, after you have gathered all this information and more people start to, gather information from their lens, from their lived experience, from their communities? What is your hope for the future that, all of this can bring, into this specific space of, allyship, and also, with the LGBTQ plus community in this space?
No, thank you. I think there's a couple things that when I look at through the lens of Fresno State, I see the potential for fundraising from allies for projects we may not have thought about, perhaps with the College Cultural Gender Center and the work they do with LGBTQ students, serving 25,000 students on campus. I think there's potential for giving to that. I think there's potential for giving to a queer studies minor. I think there's potential for giving to professorships within women's studies and queer studies. And all of this is emerging, especially here at Fresno State. But I think the potential is there. It's just harnessing that information and using it with authentic and sincere messaging. I think that's also important. You want the messaging to be authentic, sincere. You don't want it to look performative, and you also don't want people to feel as if they're tokens or being exploited in the messaging to support the campus.
I love that. And can we dig deeper there? Because we could talk an hour about, how to avoid performative allyship, and how to make sure that we don't create these unsafe, psychologically unsafe spaces where we're, putting tokenism at the forefront just to show that we are checking the box. And this is a big conversation that we have here oftentimes, big point of tension as well. So I'd love to dive deeper there. How can people avoid that, in practical ways? Because it's a big umbrella term to say, like, make sure we avoid this. But what are some small steps people can make sure that they take to not go into performative allyship, and to avoid, tokenism?
No, I appreciate that's a really good question. I think asking people from that community if they feel the messaging is sincere and authentic, asking people, leaders in that community, if they feel tokenized, if they feel like it's performative. I also, it's Pride Month right now, which is amazing, but I also, want to bring up that there's the LGBTQ people, allies, and those that love them exist the other 11 months a year. So I don't want to just see a progress rainbow flag, which I really appreciate seeing on campus this month. But I also want to see other symbols and monuments and events that reflect who I am, and also because I know if I feel this way, there's other people that feel this way too.
I love that. And final question, I'm stretching time because you gave a beautiful presentation.
Thank you. I rushed a little bit because I didn't want to. Yeah, I didn't want to run out of time. I didn't want Bridget to be mad at me.
No, Bridget's bug. I love that. Okay, so I am originally from California, and I currently live in Patagonia in Argentina. And I heard that you also have a multicultural background as far as having lived on different continents.
Yeah.
So how can this work that you're doing now in the U.S. Be used and as a resource, and hopefully as a guiding light as well for the global community, for people who really want to speak to this cause?
No, I appreciate that. There's two things I can think about. I think I can think about immigrant rights, women's rights, refugee rights, and when you mention you're from Patagonia, I think about the environment and the rainforests and the people that live there and the people that work there and the people that live there for thousands of years. They need to feel a sense of belonging as well. And I think it's important for us to think as global citizens. I'm trying to get there. I read a lot about that. I'm getting there. I'm not where I want to be, but I know I'm going to educate myself to be better into the future.
I love that. All right, Peter, thank you so much for stretching time with me today.
Thank you.
Any final words, food for thought, and then just remind folks how they can connect with you and continue to learn about the work that you're doing currently.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate you and Power to Fly. Bridget's been holding my hand. This presentation is so special for me. It's the first time I've been introduced as doctor, and so I really appreciate that. I've been a student at Fresno State for 35 years, a lifelong learner. So this was just a really beautiful way to celebrate that. I want to give a plug that my dissertation is on ProQuest and academia.edu. I've had only 17 views and one person's downloaded it. I think it was my friend Andy Waldron, but I'll take it because you have to start somewhere. So thank you so much, Mariella.
Thank you so much, and continue the great work. Definitely check out what Peter is doing. Dr. Robertson, congratulations. I'm happy that we could be here to celebrate, especially during Pride. And I've been saying this throughout the summit, Pride does not end this month. It is every day. And so the work that we do and the voices that we uplift and share space with, it's so important. So thank you for the work that you're doing. I love that you're a lifetime learner, and that you unapologetically say that. And I would encourage us to all be lifelong learners, even if we don't, try to strive for any titles or to go into university. That this is a big learning opportunity. As we see with Dr. Robertson's presentation, historically speaking, we've not been able to share ourselves in this way and open up space in this way. So, learning is key. The learning curve can be difficult, which is why also community is key. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you.
All right. Goodbye.